No, because because Tuesday's going to be an A day. So because Friday's a B day, so Tuesday's going to be an A day. You can't go to B twice. So Tuesday next week will be an A day.
That's what you know for a fact. Or is that what you
So the week after that's going to be a B week or an A week?
No.
Next week is still technically a B week
Like the week after.
or an A week. The week after that will be a B week. Yes. So Tuesday will be an A day next week. Tuesday will be an A day. Wednesday will be a B day. A B. So that means it'll be an A week.
So the week after that.
That'll be a Monday. Sort of. Just you go to your B class on Friday. You can't go to B twice in a row. So Tuesday, the day after Labor Day, you come to A day. So you'll have me on Tuesday.
After next week.
Deal with that another. A will be Monday. That week.
Tuesday and all day and Monday.
All right. So that's just how it is. You'll get your. Is there anyone that for some reason knows there's not going to be here Thursday? All right. Just remind me at the end of class I already have your reviews ready. So I don't want you to necessarily start them, but in case for whatever reason you're out Thursday, you've got your review. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about your last lesson. So we are talking about absolute value inequalities. So we're still dealing with our less than signs or greater than signs, all that stuff. So solving absolute value inequalities is similar to solving absolute value equations. So that thing we did really bad on the test. So hopefully with some extra practice today, with just adding in 1 or 2 extra steps, we get the gist of it. Yes?
You say that, would you say if we did better on that part, everybody was out of B or higher?
I would say so, yes. Because that section really killed y'all. Yes. Maybe not a B or higher, but at least a C, yes. All right, so just like with absolute value equations, with absolute value inequalities, you have to get the absolute value alone first. You can't distribute all that stuff we talked about with that last bell ringer. So you have to get the absolute value alone. All right? Instead of 2 things you need to think about once you get the absolute value alone, you have to think of 3 things. Okay? So first of all, if the absolute value is greater than or equal to a negative number, then your answer is all real numbers. So for example, if I have like the absolute value of n plus 8 is greater than -2. When we had absolute value equations, we said, oh, it's equal to a negative, my answer is no solution. But with absolute value inequalities, it's a little different because I don't have an equal sign. So my absolute value is always what sign, positive or negative? What is absolute value always? Positive. Okay, so I have a positive, which is greater than a negative. Is a positive always greater than a negative? Yes. So that's why your answer for that is all real numbers. All right. If you have that the absolute value is less than or equal to a negative, then your answer is no solution. So we can take this example once again. So if I change my sign to be less than or equal to, I have a positive is less than or equal to a negative. Is that true? No. So that's why if you have an absolute value that's less than or equal to a negative, you get that a positive is less than a negative. So that's false. So your answer is no solution. So your answer is not always no solution when you end up with an absolute value, blah, 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 a negative. It's either all real numbers or no solution. You have to make that call. Okay? If the absolute value is equal to a positive, then just like before, that should say not create A, that should say create two equations. I don't know why it says that. Create 2 equations. So if the absolute value is equal to a positive number, create 2 equations. So not necessarily equal, but as long as it's not less than or equal to or greater than or equal to a positive. So if the absolute value has that inequality sign and to the right of that inequality sign is a positive number, you're going to create 2 equations. Oh, I'm sorry, not 2 equations. I see it now. I messed up. My bad. Erase. That's my fault. I know what it is. I was looking at a different part of my notes. Okay. If the absolute value is equal to a positive, you're going to create a compound inequality. So what we talked about last week. You're going to create an or an and. All right, that's my fault. I apologize. I reordered the notes after I'd already printed mine, so I was looking at the wrong section. Okay. So if the absolute value is equal to a positive number, you're going to create a compound inequality. So that's your or versus your and. Okay? If the sign is greater than or equal to, the compound inequality will be an or inequality. And a way to help you remember that. So you can't make this call until the absolute value is alone. That's your first step. Get that absolute value alone. I gave an example in class yesterday with my 10th period. Your absolute value is in jail. It's behind bars. You have to get it alone first before you can try and deal with it. So the inmate, the guy behind the bars, behind the absolute value, you have to get it alone before you can try and get it out. Okay? All right, so if the sign is greater than or equal to, the compound inequality will be an or inequality. The way I have you remember that, think of great or. So instead of greater, great or. Write that down. Great or. All right, if the inequality is less than or equal to, it will be an and inequality. And the way I have you remember that, less than.
How do you come up with these?
I actually didn't come up with that. Coach Ford came up with it.
Of course you did.
Yeah, Coach Ford came up with it. Wasn't me. Because I emailed him a couple days ago. I said, how are you getting them to remember this? And that's what he told me. So,
I came up with some BS for geology.
it's being recorded. I suggest you don't say anything about the little teacher.
I love those.
Oh, okay. Okay, so if your sign is greater than or equal to, it's an or inequality. If your sign is less than or equal to, it is an and inequality. So use these to help you. Great or less than. And you're going to create two inequalities. One's going to look the same as before. So for example, if I break this up, so if I have n plus 8 is greater than 2. I'm going to create two inequalities. One that's going to look just like this. And then the other one is going to be the opposite. So you still have the absolute value, whatever was inside there, but you're going to switch their sign, and you're going to make it negative. So that's what we're going to do. Kind of similar to absolute value equations. When we broke it up, we had one positive, one negative. Well, here, we're going to have one that stays the same, and then one inequality flips. And if the inequality flips, the sign has to flip, just like we've already talked about before. Okay? So I think it's easiest to just jump right in and use these rules as we go. All right, so let's start off with number 1. Okay, so the first step is to get the absolute value by itself. Is the absolute value alone? Okay, what I mean by that is you can't have absolute value of blah, blah, blah plus 5 equals blah, blah, blah. Or 2 times the absolute value of blah, blah, blah equals blah, blah, blah. There's nothing with the absolute value besides what's inside the absolute value, whatever's stuck behind bars. So is that by itself? Yes. Okay. From here, it equals a positive number. So we're going to create a compound inequality. Because my sign is greater than or equal to, is this going to be an and or an or inequality? Or, because I said great or. Right? So great or, that means that this we're going to create an or inequality, an or compound inequality. Okay? So we're going to create two separate inequalities. Right. So we're going to drop the absolute value. So the first one's going to look exactly the same. Just drop the absolute value. And then the next one, that left side stays the same. We're going to flip our inequality sign. And because we flipped it, we have to make it negative. Anytime your inequality sign flips, you have to make the right side negative. And now we have two inequalities that we can solve. So reminder, this is 4. Okay, so this is an OR inequality. Just like we talked about on Thursday, you just have to solve them, and then we'll figure out what to do at the end with that OR. Okay, so just like an equation, we got to get x alone. So for 2x plus 5 is greater than or equal to 9. I need 2x by itself. So what do I need to do with that 5? Subtract. Yep. Perfect. So 2x is greater than or equal to, what's 9 minus 5? 4. Divide both sides by 2. X is greater than or equal to 2. So that's my first one. We'll deal with the graphing in a minute. My second one, so once again, subtract 5 from both sides. What is negative 9 minus 5? Negative 14. And then divide both sides by 2. Do I need to flip? No, because I'm not dividing by a negative. So those are my two answers. X is greater than or equal to 2, or x is less than or equal to negative 7. All right. So let's see. For my number line, I think it's going to be easier to go by 2's. So go ahead and draw your number line. I'm going to start at negative 8. Negative 8, negative 6, negative 4, negative 2, 0, 2, 4. Something like that. Now remember, with OR inequalities, do they point away from each other or towards each other? Away. Okay, because only one of those conditions applies. Whatever x is needs to be greater than 2, or greater than or equal to 2, or less than or equal to 7. So greater than or equal to 2. Open or close? Close. In which direction am I going to point? Right, because it's greater than or equal to. And then less than negative 7. Open or close, or less than or equal to. And pointing left. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's move on to any questions on number 1. So we created two separate inequalities, and because my sign was greater than or equal to, that's an OR inequality. All right, let's move on to number 2. Is the absolute value alone? Yes. Okay, it is alone. Because my sign is less than, is this going to be an OR an AND inequality? And, less than, don't. So this is an AND inequality, good. We'll deal with that in a minute. Okay, we're going to create two inequalities. 6 plus 2b is less than 8. And 6 plus less than 8. And 6 plus 2b. Remember, for the second one, you flip your sign, so it's going to become greater than. And then that number on the right is going to become negative. And now we're going to solve. Because when you're creating your two separate equations, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So when you make that one negative, you have to flip. All right, from here we can solve. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides on both of these equations. I'm just going to solve them both at once. So for the left one, 8 minus 6 is 2, so I get 2b is less than 2. And then on the right, what is negative 8 minus 6? Negative 14. And then lastly, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Am I going to flip on either of them? No. So I get, on the first one, v is less than 1. And what's negative 14 divided by 2? Good. So v is greater than negative 7. Now remember, when we have an and inequality, you have to write it in that weird inequality notation. So you have to flip all of your signs to be less than. Yes?
Would be negative 7 less than b less than negative. No, I meant less than 1.
Perfect. Okay, so you go from least to greatest. So negative 7 is my smaller one, and all of your signs have to be less than or equal to. So negative 7 is less than b is less than 1. Perfect. All right, now we need to graph. So once again, I'm going to go by 2. So negative 8, 6, 4, 2, 0, 2. Now with and inequalities, do they point away or towards? Towards. Remember, they connect. Okay? So let's just plot our circles first. So v is less than negative 1. Is that open or closed? Open. So at 1. And then v is greater than negative 7. Open or closed? Open. They're both open. And then since I want greater than negative 7, that's to the right. Less than negative 1, that's to the left. So you want everything in between because this is an and inequality. Okay? All good so far. Okay. Really running out of time. All right, we're gonna skip 3. Or let's get the absolute value alone first, and then I'll give you the answer. Okay? Because we're running out of time. Because we gotta take that quiz. Okay. So we have a quiz. 1.5 and 1.6. I told y'all that. And I sent out a remind last night. So if you're not on your mind, you didn't get it. Because I forgot to send it on school.
Yes.
I swear I said it.
I know. Am I the only one who made a quiz today?
See? I'm not the only one. I swear I sent it.
Like, I forgot this morning, but I remember last night.
I remember this morning.
Alright. Anyway. So yes, we have a quiz. Alright. Anyway. So let's get the absolute value alone first. Then I'll give you the answer. Because from there, it's same old. So the absolute value here, notice it's not all by itself on the left side. So I have to get it alone first. So this negative 4 needs to get to the other side. How can I get that to the other side? Adding. So add 4. And now the absolute value is alone. Negative 6 minus 2b is greater than, what's 6 plus 4? 10. All right. Because the sign is greater than, is this going to be an or an and inequality? Or. All right. From here, you're going to split it up into 2 separate equations. I'm just going to give you the answer. Okay, and you can work it out on your own time. So your answer is b is less than negative 8, or b is greater than 2. So you can work that one out at home. B is less than negative 8, or b is greater than 2. What? No. Look at all y'all joining the line now. Anyway. Okay. And it was on the syllabus. Yeah. Anyway. That's why I always say join both, because last night I forgot to send it on Schoology, but I sent it over remind. Anyway.
I didn't get a text message.
This is from the same.
What do you mean?
I didn't get one.
Ninth period, 10th period.
I know.
Ninth. We'll deal with that later. Okay, we'll deal with that after class. All right, but I promise I sent it. All right, number 4. So once again, we're going to get it alone, and then I'm going to give you the answer. Okay? What is the operation happening between the 4 and the absolute value? Multiplication. All right, on your test, almost all of you tried to distribute that. You cannot do that. Whatever is in jail is stuck in jail. Okay? You can't change it. It is stuck. So that 4, you cannot distribute it in. Okay? So if the operation is multiplication, how do I get the absolute value by itself? Divide. You need to divide both sides by 4. So you cannot distribute. Alright, you cannot distribute. Look at all your
I'll draw when I get my new phone.
Okay. Alright, so I divided both sides by 4. So on this left side, I'm left with the 2x plus 3. Do I need to switch my sign? Nope. What's 4 divided by 4? 1. 1. Alright, now since it is a less than sign, is it going to be an or an and inequality? And, very good. So this is an and inequality. So your answer, I'll give it to you both the inequality notation way and the other way. So you get x is less than -1 and x is greater than -2. All right, what I think I'll also do for this is I'll post the key to the notes. That way you can check your answers. Okay? So writing this as an inequality notation, we can do that together real quick. Perfect. Go from least to greater. So -2 is smaller than -1. Switch all of your signs to be less than. Perfect. All right. Let's move on to number 5. Okay. So number 5. Once again, absolute value needs to be by itself. So that -4 needs to get to the other side. How do I get that to the other side? Add 4. Okay, let's add 4. So I get the absolute value of 2b minus 1 is greater than or equal to what's -11 plus 4? -7. Okay, if this were an absolute value equation, you would stop and say no solution. But you have one of two answers here. This is what we talked about on the front. It's either going to be no solution or it's going to be all real numbers. So this is where you have to think about what happens. The absolute value is always what? Positive. So you have positive greater than or equal to a negative. Is that true or false? True. True. Okay? Because it's always going to at least be greater than. So this is true. And what's your answer when you have a true statement? All real numbers, yes. And remember that all real numbers is the whole number line. Because that's saying any number you plug in will work. Because your absolute value is always positive, and this -7 is always going to be -7. So a positive is greater than or equal to a negative. It's not going to be equal to, but it's at least greater than. So that's true. And because this is true, positive is greater than a negative, your answer is all real numbers. Okay? All right. Make sense? All right. Okay. Do what? Repeat that. Yes. All right. Once again, I hate that we're rushing through this, but I want to make sure you have time for your quiz. Okay? So once again, we're going to get this alone, and then you're going to split it in your 2 equations. I promise I will upload the key. That way you can check your answers, because this will be extra practice, good practice for you. Okay? So absolute value needs to be alone first. So what do I need to do? Subtract 1. So I get -2x plus 1 is less than or equal to what? 13. So because it's less than or equal to, is that or and? And. Less than. Okay? Let me give you your answer. Okay. So you get, let's see. you get x is greater than or equal to -6, and x is less than or equal to 7. That's your answer. X is greater than or equal to -6, and x is less than or equal to 7. So as an inequality notation, -6 is less than or equal to 7. Or -7 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 7. All right. We're going to make sure we do this last three together. Okay. So number 7. Where is it? Number 7. Okay. Absolute value needs to be by itself. What is the operation happening between the 3 and the absolute value? Multiplication. Once again, like I said earlier, you cannot distribute. Whatever is in jail is stuck in jail. You can't touch it. All right. So, what do I need to do to get the 3 on the other side? Divide. Yes. So divide both sides by 3. 1 minus 5x is less than or equal to -19. All right, so once again, we have our absolute value, blah, 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 a negative. So you have, hold on, this is where things change. So in the other problem, we had a positive was greater than or equal to a negative. Okay, now we have something different. My absolute value is always positive, but I have a positive less than or equal to a negative. Now that's going to be no solution because that statement is false. Your positive number is never going to be less than your negative. So that's false. And because I got a false answer, it is no solution. Very good. No solution is your answer. All right, any questions on that? So if the positive is greater than a negative, it's all real numbers. If the positive is less than the negative, it's no solution. Okay? All right, we'll do these last two together. Ooh, that's not the last one. I'll post the answer to those. That's what we've already done. It was just some extra practice. So that was what was on your last test that we all didn't do well on. So that was just some extra practice. Okay, so I have 8 plus 5 times the absolute value of 4r minus 10 is less than 58. Okay? Imagine that that's an x. 8 plus 5x is less than 58. So remember, you have to get the 5x alone first. Okay? So some of us on our test were dividing by 5 before subtracting. Okay? So if you had this scenario right here, it's x instead. What would you move first? The 8. So the same thing's going to happen here. You have to subtract that 8 first. Because you have to get whatever is stuck with the x alone first. So whatever is stuck with the absolute value needs to be alone first. So I have 5 times 4r minus 10 is less than, what's 58 minus 8? 50. All right. Then we're going to divide those sides by 5, because that operation is multiplication. So divide both sides by 5. You have that the absolute value of 4r minus 10 is less than 10. All right. Now we have to make the call, is this or and? So this will be and, yes, because it is less than. So this is going to be an and inequality. Very good. All right, this will be an and inequality. Okay, now we have to split it into our two inequalities. Okay, so 4r minus 10 is less than 10, so that one you write exactly as is. And then for the second one, left side stays the same. You're going to flip and change the sign of the right. Okay. Then we're going to solve as we normally would. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides. 4r is less than 20, and then add 10. You get 4r is greater than 0. All right, and then we're going to divide both sides by 4. So divide. So you get r is less than 5, and 4 is greater than, or I'm sorry, r is greater than 0. R is greater than 0. My apologies. Okay. Now we need to write this in inequality notation. Someone raise their hand besides Caleb and Abby. Tell me, besides Jake. Someone else. Tell me how to write it in inequality notation. Which number am I going to list first? 0. What do all my signs need to be? Less than. So 0 is less than r is less than 5. Very good. So 0 is less than r is less than 5. Okay, now we need to graph. So we're going to graph. So let's see. What did I do? Negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So since both of my signs don't have the or equal to, are my circles for both of them going to be open or closed? Open, because they don't have the or equal to, so they're going to be open. And then remember, since this is an and inequality, are they going to go away or towards? Towards, so they're going to connect. Very good. Okay, so listen real quick. Let's talk about that. So this delta math is not going to be due until your test, which will be Tuesday. So you have a week. Your other two delta maths, 1.5 and 1.6, are due tonight because it's day of quiz. Okay, so those are due tonight. This one will not be due. So honestly, I wouldn't even, unless you have time, I would encourage you to start this tonight. But if you haven't finished yours, do what? If you finish it tonight, yeah. Yep. But if you have your other two, those are due tonight, and once they're closed, they're closed. So those aren't reopening. So if you haven't done those, that's what needs to be first on your checklist. Okay. All right, let's do this last one, and then we'll start your quiz. Okay, so remember, whatever is stuck with the absolute value needs to get alone. So that 2 is stuck with it for now. So what do I need to do first? Subtract the 7. So subtract 7. I get 2 times 4x minus 4 is greater than 40. Now I need the absolute value alone. So how do I get it by itself? Divide by 2. So the absolute value of 4x minus 4 is greater than 40 divided by 2. 20. All right, from here, you're going to create 2 inequalities. All right, your first one's going to look exactly like this. 4x minus 4 is greater than 20. What's your other one going to look like? Very good. So you flip the sign, and when you flip the sign, you have to change whatever your sign of your number on the right side is. Good. Now we have 2 inequalities. So we're going to add 4 to both of them. So I get 4x is greater than 24, and 4x is less than negative 16. Oh, we forgot to say, is this or and? What's your sign?
Greater.
Greater. Great or, right? Great or. So this is going to be an or. Less than is your and. Okay? And lastly, divide both sides by 4. So you get x is greater than 6, or perfect.
What's the quiz on?
1.5 and 1.6. So it's essentially this, just without the absolute value. So regular inequalities and compound inequalities. So I don't think it'll be that bad because you're using all the same rules, just without the absolute value. Okay? So let's see. Last thing. Once again, I went by 2, so negative 6, negative 4, 2, 0, 2, 4, 6. Alright. So x is greater than 6. Open or closed? X is greater than 6. Open. Now remind me, does or point towards or away? Away. So x is greater than 6. Is that going to be to the right or the left? The right, because it's greater than. And then x is less than negative 4. Open or close? Open. And which direction am I going to point? To the left. Alright. I apologize for speeding through that. What I'll do either tonight or tomorrow is record a lesson or I'll post the key first of all, and then I'll also record any questions we didn't go over. That way you need to hear if you can. Okay? Alright. Here's what we're going to do now. I'm going to go ahead and hand you your review in case you're not here on Thursday for whatever reason. Your test is still Tuesday. Alright, but I'm going to go ahead and hand it to you. You don't have to start it between now and Thursday because this is what we're going to do in class. Don't feel like this is homework. You can glance at it if you want, but I would encourage you to wait. Because you've got plenty of other things you can do in the meantime. But I want you to at least go ahead and hold on to it. Please don't lose it between now and Thursday. Please.